And this is certainly worth doing, so I'm happy to do it, even if I do it badly. So we have big business and big government. We have globalization, we have a federal government which is grabbing more and more power to itself to the extent of excluding other political structures from any real power. We have the IMF, the World Bank, the United Nations, the European Union. And I want to talk more about those things. But the key thing is, that libertarians will tell you that the European Union is socialist. And they're right. The European Union is socialist, but it's socialism that gets on very cosily with big business. Now, we used to talk about the choice being between state socialism, state capitalism, which was communism, or big business capitalism. I agree with the speaker this morning that the word capitalism is not a helpful word. In fact, I challenge you to find the use of it anywhere at all, anywhere in my book, Small is Still Beautiful. Because as was said this morning, that word is a buzzword. For some people, it's the thing which must be defended at all costs. It's the answer to all the world's problems. For other people, it's a thing that must be attacked at all costs. It's the cause of all the world's problems. And that word is actually therefore acts as a barrier to understanding and dialogue. The key thing is that big, ultimately, as was shown graphically this morning, is unsustainable. That globalization is not going to work in the long term. We quoted Aristotle. We should listen to philosophers more often than we do. One thing which is entirely unsustainable and unnatural is a process, not of progress, which is fine, or growth, which is fine, or evolution, which is fine, but acceleration. We live in the 20th century, 21st century now, in an age which is accelerating. The poet Roy Campbell said very memorably once that we live, to say this society is progressing, we can only say it's true in one way. It's like a car. We have the steering wheel, which is wisdom. We have the brakes, which is tradition. And we have the accelerator, or the gas pedal, whatever you call it over here, which is progress. He said we live in an age which sees no use for the steering wheel and no use for the brakes, and just puts its foot down as hard as possible on the gas. So what we're living in is something which is ultimately unsustainable. It isn't going to continue. So it's not a question of small being beautiful, or small being best, or small being preferable. It's a question of small being necessary. So, I wrote my book, Small is Still Beautiful, as a way of showing how Schumacher's words were as relevant today as they were when they were written. It was really Schumacher's equivalent to Chesterton's book, What's Wrong with the World? Schumacher basically saying, what's wrong with the world? And I like that basically because if I don't know what I'm talking about, Schumacher does, and that's why my book follows very closely upon Schumacher's book, go through some of the key arguments in Small is Beautiful and Small is Still Beautiful. First of all, we have the myths of mammon, as I call it, the theoretical virtues of the economy under which we live. And it's faith in the hidden hand of the free market, hope that something will turn up, and love of economic growth at all costs. This is interesting, because the Christian God is a somewhat mysterious thing. No, it's a trinity, but a unity. It's a mystery. But it's not as mysterious as those who believe in the free market as a God. Because what they believe in is a blind force which is benign. Something which has no personality, which always behaves virtuously. For me, this is much more mysterious than believing in a personal God who is love. So this hidden hand of the free market. The free market doesn't exist. It's a figment of the libertarian imagination. All sorts of things interfere with the freedom of the market, such as, for instance, economies of scale, advertising, subsidies, taxes, patenting, lobbying, and the various shenanigans we saw illustrated in the first talk there with big banks, big business, hand in glove with the Federal Reserve Board, who also hand in glove with the so-called regulators and government. None of that is conducive to a free market. And that free market is unattainable. It's as unattainable as going back to the Garden of Eden. Because as Pope Benedict said, that the big problem facing the world today, economically and politically, is connected to sin. The refusal to act virtuously. You know, we're told today, one of the big swear words you must ever use is the word protectionism. So, if that's offended you, again, just keeping Dale happy. But free trade as a God also doesn't exist. Because, you know, the law of comparative advantage, we're told, means that we can no longer manufacture goods in this country as competitively as countries in the Pacific Rim. So let's specialize on our strengths. Now let's concentrate on this service economy. I think one of the figures given this morning was that only 14% of our gross domestic product now is manufacturing. So let's concentrate now on our strengths. Well, you know, once you have globalization, jobs are going to go where the labour costs are cheapest, and it doesn't just apply to manufacturing. It applies to service industries. You try, tell you what, you go, on my way home tomorrow, if for some reason my plane's delayed, and I want to make a phone call, I'm going to eventually, after speaking to 2 or 3 robots, get through to somebody in India who doesn't even know where Minnesota is. But he has a computer, and he has some grasp of the English language. It's not just manufacturing jobs that are going to the Pacific Rim, it's service jobs also. Global corporations building their global headquarters, relocating, etc. What's left? What's left in the so-called developed world? Those parts of the economy that we can't export, such as education and health. Now, education and health are those parts of the economy that don't make money, they cost money. So we are left with those parts of the economy that actually cost money. All those parts of the economy that make money are being systematically shipped to other parts of the world. So if we really believe that the US economy, as we've become accustomed to it over the last century or more, is sustainable on that basis and that globalized plan, I think we're deluding ourselves. So that's faith in the hidden hand of the free market being the first of the theoretical virtues at the heart of the mistakes being made. The hope that something will turn up is what in my book I call it the Micawber factor, after Mr. Micawber from the Dickens novel. This sort of feckless character who's no idea what he's doing with his money, with his life, but has a sort of blind hope that something will turn up to keep him out of debtor's prison or what have you. And we have the same thing now. We have a situation where